guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. I just got property, as most of you guys know, and lately I have been swamped with a ton of projects. I just got utilities installed. This week we're going to talk about the tree service I had over to cut down a couple trees. In the beginning, this was not my original plan because I placed my tiny house next to a tree and I thought that that tree was going to be used as some shade. All I was concerned about was finding a transport person to get the house on the foundation, having utilities installed, but nothing about cutting down a tree. I didn't even think about getting trees cut down. Multiple people noticed that there was a tree that was kind of leaning towards my house a lot. I did not realize this when I placed the tiny house. The tiny house wasn't even there when I put the foundation there. This pine towered 3 times the size of the tiny house up in the air. I couldn't do the job by myself. I wasn't going to get my 12-foot ladder and get up there and trim down all the branches, and there was no way that I was going to be able to take a chainsaw to it, pull it down myself. The last transport guy said, I know of a guy who can cut that tree for you. He gave me his name and I proceeded to give him a call. Now this guy stopped by and he gave me a quote on cutting down the tree. He told me that he was going to be using his spider machine to get the job done. There were a few deciding factors on why I decided to get the trees cut down, and it's not only because of the lean that was towards my house. Pine trees shed a lot. There are pine needles all over my front yard. There were also pine cones in my front yard, and one of the utility people told me that if I boil one of these pine cones, that a bunch of ticks will start to come out. So that's also something that I didn't want next to my tiny house, was pine cones and a pine tree that are full of ticks. According to the tree guy, pine beetles are also a thing with pines. If you see the bottom of the pine turning yellow, that means that the pine beetles are making their way up to the top where it's all green. If you look at a line of trees and you see the bottoms are all yellow, you can almost guarantee that that one has been attacked by pine beetles. A pine tree's branches don't seem very sturdy, so during weather, all of these branches would fall to the ground, and if I would have kept that tree up, the branches would have hit the roof, maybe damaged my tiny house in the process. Now, because the tree was so close to the tiny house, this probably made the price of the tree cutting go up, because there was more of a liability just in case when the tree fell that it did hit the tiny house, but thank goodness it didn't. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty of the tree service coming back and cutting the tree. This guy used a remote control to get this spider thing off of the truck that transported the spider to my location. I believe he was saying that the crane does go up at least 100 feet, if not a lot more. This is how he was able to get inside that bucket and go to the top and cut all of the branches that were on the big trunk of that tree. Deciding to cut the branches first was important to this tree guy because a lot of the branches were towering over my house. If he would have just cut at the bottom on the way down, the tree would have probably hit the house. Cleaning up the branches first was the best plan of action for these guys to do. This guy was amazing also because all he did was he had this chainsaw in his hand, and when he was up there, he would just like cut the limb and then just like nonchalantly toss it to the side and it would fall in my yard. While there was another guy at the bottom cleaning up all of the debris, the branches, the trunks, the trees, the limbs, all of the pine needles, all of that made a huge mess in my yard. So there was these 2 guys working simultaneously, one up in the tree in the machine and then one in a skid steer with a bucket. He was collecting all the debris and putting it in a huge dumpster. When the dumpster got filled up, the second guy would go to the shop, which was maybe 3 minutes away, dump off all of the debris that was in the dumpster and come back with an empty truck. When all of the branches were off of this first pine tree, I noticed that the tree next to it was kind of ugly, not aesthetically pleasing, and it was still making the yard look dark. The branches were still hanging over, and it still looked like if weather hit it, that it could hit my tiny house. So I asked the tree guy if I could have that one cut down too, and he said sure. And the second tree was even faster than the first tree. He just took a saw to the bottom of it, and it seriously took like 5 minutes, if that, and he cut the bottom and the whole tree just fell. Now the second tree, they decided not to cut all of the branches on the way up because it was easier for them to cut the branches when the tree had fallen to the ground. So he took his chainsaw, went along the whole entire trunk, cut off all of the branches, and put them in a pile for the second guy to scoop those up and put those in the dumpster. There were pine needles, sap, and sawdust everywhere, and by the time this guy got the second tree down, the first guy was putting a rope around the first tree to pull that down. In the beginning, they wanted to have it fall forward, but he said with the way this tree is positioned, it is supposed to fall backwards, so I think we're going to do it that way. Unfortunately, my camera stopped working at that time and I had to turn it off, and I did not get the tree falling to the ground, but it was an amazing experience to watch anyway. When the first trunk hit the ground, he started to cut it in big pieces. They used that same skid steer to pick up these big chunks of wood. They had this claw-looking attachment on it, and they put those in the dumpster as well. A bittersweet moment when I had the chickens and Clucky Chan out. They came over by where the tree was being cut, and they were picking out of the dirt and the tree all of the bugs. It's bittersweet because I gave Clucky Chan to my neighbor for now, or maybe forever, but he's no longer with us. But my chickens were really bold when any of the utility guys or worker guys were there. They just didn't care. They're people friendly. I was all good with it, and so were they. I miss Clucky Chan, what can I say? I was asking the tree guys about the stumps that they left. They were a little bit large, and he said we were gonna clean those up, and he ended up leaving me a flat top for both of those. Now I'm probably gonna do something for the chickens, or maybe I'll put like a little garden in there, but I don't mind the stumps being there. They did offer to come back and grind those stumps out, but again, I didn't wanna keep paying more money. I'll just be creative and build something in that spot. Cutting down these two trees opened up a huge space. In the beginning, it was very dark when you look onto the tiny house, but now it's big and bright and open. That's where my front yard will be, so stay tuned for what will be going on with that. After the guys cleaned up the yard with all the pine needles and the tree branches and the trunks and all of the pieces of wood, they made several trips back and forth with the dumpster. The guys used a leaf blower to blow all of the dust off of my house and out of the yard, put it all in one big pile, and those also went to the dump in the dumpster. While he was on the roof blowing off all of the dust, he noticed that there was a bunch of leaves in the gutter and blew those out for me. Before these guys came, my yard was spotless, and when these guys were doing the job, my entire yard was a complete mess, and by the time these guys left, my yard looked spotless again. They cleaned up every single last piece of pine needle, probably even dust in that yard, but it looked great. Cost for this job was $1,250. It was $1,000 for the first tree and $250 for the second tree. There is another tree that I'm looking to get cut down as well, so I did call this company back. He's going to come and do a quote on taking this tree down too. This is not a pine. I believe it is a cedar, which means it's really good wood, but these guys take the wood after they cut it and do whatever they're going to do with it. I don't get any of the wood, so I won't be keeping any of it for projects. I did purchase a mini chainsaw so that I could get up there and try to cut these branches down, but I only have a 12-foot ladder, so I don't think I'm going to be getting up there, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get past 12 feet. That's why this spider that could reach 100 feet plus is probably the way to go if you have tall trees on your property and are looking to get them taken down. When you own property for your tiny house, you are going to have to deal with some of the things that nature throws your way, which means trees, the surrounding trees that are around, and weather. The weather could have knocked down that tree, damaged my tiny house, and or killed all of us. That's one reason why I had the trees taken down. Aesthetic purposes also, but mostly for safety. If this video helped you and you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. Click the notifications bell so you can receive a notification each time I post a new video, which is every Sunday. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I'd like to share some trees getting cut. I don't even put that big spider machine. And decide, don't put that. And it's bittersweet because I gave Clucky Chan to my thunder there because they just didn't give a shit. Don't put that. Blowing all of the leaves that were out of there. For your tiny house is a large, daunting task. Around the property, there are tons of, but he had an attachment with these like claw-like attachment. Don't put that.